Good morning, folks. It's another episode of the Gary and Mark Show, and I'm Gary.
And I am Mark.
And we're coming to you not live.
But we are alive, Gary.
We're alive and well in historic downtown Saluda, North Carolina.
And we've podcasted from Saluda a few times before, but the first time in this little place.
Yes.
What is this place?
It's a nice little park. I forget the name. But it's near the senior center, and that's appropriate.
That is appropriate.
We're all seniors.
And they probably have a bathroom up there if we need to get to it.
Yeah.
They do have a recycling bucket over there.
Okay.
So we got a busy show because people, if they're watching on YouTube, can see we have a guest today.
Yes, we do.
We'll get to our guest in just a minute. But, yeah, you had at least one little bit of
we go talk about on this day in history, and sometimes it's like Louis the 16th getting guillotined, or it's sad news or war stuff. But today we're going to go with May 25, 1977, the day the very first Star Wars movie came out.
That's something.
Yeah.
And we've all seen it, right?
Yeah.
And I bet most of our readers have seen it.
Yeah.
Good story.
Yeah.
Good event. Well, I have one thing. This friend of mine, Rich Bauer, told me he took his granddaughter to a brand new petting zoo down in Watershed.
Oh.
And he said the only thing they had was one dog. It was a Shih Tzu.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah.
Shih Tzu?
Yeah.
Okay, the one dog?
Yeah.
Petting zoo? Okay. So, okay.
Well, actually,
that was funny to me.
a camp person we all may know, Hoyle Adams.
We know him.
He has a dog that is half Jack Russell and half Shih Tzu, and they call it a Jack Shit.
Okay. No, saying that's okay. That's good.
That's
all
fine.
Right. We usually have a clean show here.
That's clean.
It is. It is clean. Well, so before we introduce our guest, I'm just going to point out we have a milestone. We have passed over 15,000 downloads on Podbean, our host.
Yeah.
And in our YouTube videos, it's pushing 4,000 views. So for, a couple old people who don't know what they're doing.
Sitting around talking,
we should be proud of ourselves.
Okay.
Don't you think so?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you want a microphone stand for that, Steve? You just got to get close to it when you talk.
All right. And he's going to get to talk here in a minute. He's been sitting in the middle. But we are very fortunate today to have a fellow that we've known for, I'd say pretty close to 50 years, who came up here from Florida back in 1960 to work at a summer camp, and has pretty much devoted his life to helping show others the outdoors. Some is rock climbing, others it might be snakes, others it might even be birds of prey. But he has really, in his 60-plus years of working with children and adults, done a great job of trying to show people the natural world. And there are tons of kids out there who are probably now grandparents.
Oh, yeah.
Who finally remember Steve taking them on their first rock climb, or Steve introducing them to a peregrine falcon, or Steve showing them venomous snakes and how venomous snakes aren't bad snakes. They're snakes. I think it just hit me probably about this time in 76 or 77. Steve, who was then, I believe, at Falling Creek, would come over to Mondam and do like a full day, or maybe it was 2 days, pretty much of a wilderness first aid kind of course for counselors.
And he's done it for students, kids, too, because he has a book about that.
Well, WEMA, yeah.
Yeah.
Wilderness Emergency Medical Aid. All right.
There you go.
Well, I've talked too much about Steve.
You sure have.
I sure have. So we'll let Steve talk.
Okay, so Steve, we may have to lean forward, or I can go get you a mic stand if you want.
Here, how about?
Well, that could work. We can take turns.
Yeah.
I'll go get a mic stand while you hold it. And
All right. Well,
but before he gets, sometimes just add it up.
Yeah.
If you add up his age, your age, and my age, we have almost 220 years right here. That goes back to like the Declaration of Independence or something.
Let's see, 220. Let's see, 2 gets you to, well, that gets you back to the 1800, doesn't it?
All right, so I'm just going to turn my mic off for a second while you get started on talking about his early days of climbing, because that's what I want. He is a pioneer in rock climbing, and I'll be right back.
I remember, say, 1970, my second summer at camp, Jim Hopkins wanted to get a pair of heavy-duty hiking boots, and so he had to measure his foot or trace his foot or something and send the info to Steve, who was then at Sequoia. And you were like the agent, was it Reikley? I'm not sure what the boot company.
I think it was called Loa.
Oh, Loa. Oh, okay. And they're still around, just like you.
Yeah, I was the very first person around this area that's had gear and would sell it to people.
Yeah.
And people found out about it. I don't know how they found out, but that guy's got some stuff out there at Sequoia, and we need to go look at it and see, because that's what people use for climbing.
Yeah.
So, when I say a pioneer, when was your first, what I would call climb, were you using any sort of gear? I don't mean just like bouldering up a rock, but when was that?
Well, I went to all-day climbing school in the Tetons, and before that, all I knew how to do, and I was with my friend Bob Watts, who worked at Mondamin at the time, and we were driving out to California, and on the way out, we stopped at Rocky Mountain National Park, and went to an all-day climbing school, and it snowed. It's August.
What year was this?
This would have been, oh golly, in the early 60s, 62, I think.
Wow.
And we went to all-day climbing school. We were the only two people that showed up for the school.
Wow.
And it cost us, I think, $20 for the all day. And we learned how to hammer these metal thingy-mabobs into cracks.
Yeah.
Have you seen one of those thingy-mabobs before?
Maybe in books.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned how to tie a knot around a rope and slide the little rope, which is fastened to our feet, up, and the other one was fastened to the other foot, and we could go up the rope with these things. We learned how to do that. And
Pressicking.
that's what they called it. They had a name for it.
Even back then they had that name?
Oh, it's an old, I think, an old Polish name or something. And then we thought we knew a lot because we knew how to rappel. As a guy had taught us how to come down. We had no idea how to go up or how to safety somebody, because the other guy did all the safety. That was a guy named Bill Wallace, who now is called Wally.
Wally.
Wally Wallace.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah, and the fellow, when he said goodbye to us after taking our $20, he said, well, that's all I can show you. Now just go out and do it yourself. And so we tried doing it ourselves. We didn't know how to do it, but we had a rope with us.
And was it a real climbing rope, or was it a piece of nylon rope from the hardware store?
It was a climbing rope.
I'm guessing gold line.
It was called gold line.
Yeah.
And we all we knew was one person tied it around their waist, and they climbed, and the other person held the rope. And then,
so what,
then
from
the
bottom
other
or above?
The first person would tie the rope on and go up.
Okay.
And then the
Just
other
find a place to sit.
And the other person would come up behind him, and the first person would pull up the rope. And that was our first climb. That's without metal. We didn't have any of that metal stuff.
Yeah.
And we didn't quite know what's the first person supposed to do and what's the second person supposed to do. We didn't know any of that stuff.
Did you have those commands like they do today?
We did. Same stuff that people. Well, the last time I taught climbing was in the early 2000s, and with the same terminology, like climb, up rope, on belay, the same things continued, and I think they still do to some extent.
Oh, I think, as far as I wouldn't know,
But you would communicate by voice, and if you couldn't hear the person, you had to tug on the rope like you'd pull in a fish or something. 2 tugs meant something, and 3 tugs meant something, and hold on really tight meant something. But we learned, we had a book in one hand, and we had our climbing with the other hand, and that's how we learned this stuff.
Wait a minute, you didn't have the book in your hand at the same time you were climbing, did you? Like, what knot should we do now when the guy's dangling from...
Well, with the climbing we did wasn't all that difficult, so we could probably have the book with us and figure it out, or come down and read through it and see if we can tell what you're supposed to do. But we learned, and we pretty much learned on our own because there wasn't anybody else around that we knew any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, did you bring it back to the North Carolina camps? Were you the one to introduce that?
I think the way that actually went was Wally brought a rope and some gloves, holding on to the rope tight, and some of these little metal things that they're called carabiners. Everybody knows what carabiners are now, but back then I think they called them snap links.
Snap hooks, yeah.
And he brought some of those to Mondamin, and he asked Chief, who was in charge and ran and was the Lord of Mondamin, if he could teach rope work, he called it. Because at that time it had no other name. It wasn't called climbing, as far as we were concerned. It was,
about what year was this?
That was 1963.
Yeah.
And old Chief loved that idea. We went. There was a big hemlock tree right outside of his office. Big glass windows, and he could look out there and he could see us up in the hemlock tree, climbing up on the branches, and then hooking on to the rope with these snap link things. No helmets or anything, just and climb on and go on down, and he loved seeing that because it was the first camp that had anything like that. He'd heard of Outward Bound, which was something that was mostly in Europe and England, but there was one school of Outward Bound and just started in Colorado, and he'd heard of it, so he wanted to be the first camp that had rope work of any camps around. And so that was the beginning of that.
And I've heard that one of the inspirations was, how there'd be that one night a week you'd have a camp movie. The kids would all get in the gym, and it was the Walt Disney movie Third Man on the Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
And that was sort of an inspiring...
They looked up at they could see Odie's knob in the distance.
maybe it was.
But... I attended just a few years ago, they had the 50th anniversary of the first ascent of the nose route at Looking Glass, and that was Steve and Bob Watts and Bob Gillespie, and they were all at Black Dome. And it was a wonderful event, I thought. It had a bunch of folks, all different ages, kids, very inclusive.
So Steve was one of the first ones to do that?
Well, there were three guys, and that is a classic route.
There were a lot of people. I was surprised.
Yeah.
So tell us, I'm going to try to find a picture online to put on the YouTube version of Looking Glass. But Steve, describe Looking Glass for us and tell us where it is, just for people. Because our listeners are from all over the world.
Describe Looking Glass. Well,
they have no clue. So does it look like they're binoculars, or does it look like a telescope?
Exfoliated granite dome.
There you go.
It looks like a great big loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Made out of rock.
Yeah.
And it's very visible in pictures of the western North Carolina, all over the internet. Looking Glass Rock, North Carolina, and it's called Looking Glass because when the water would stream down it would reflect light like a looking glass or mirror. And also it was small at one end and big at the other. And the big end is where you climb up the big end.
And when you say the big end, how tall are we talking? How many feet?
Well,
I know there's different climbs, but if you were to look at it from the parkway or something, how?
It's roughly from the ground where you start climbing on the first climb ever done on it was named the Nose. We named it because we climbed it. And it's roughly 500 feet from the ground at the base of the rock up to the top.
Wow.
It zigzags a little bit. If you were to go straight down, it's more like 400 feet, but it's a good ways up there. When you get up there, you can see a long ways, and off in the distance, you can see the parkway, and that's where a lot of people see signs that say "Looking Glass Rock View," and they look down in this valley, and there's this big old glob of rock over there in the distance.
It's impressive even from that far away, though, so it's not like
It is, and I've even known people that they heard the peregrines were around Looking Glass, and peregrines, you've heard of peregrine falcons perhaps, because anytime somebody says falcon, that's the bird they mean. It's the fastest bird flying in the world. Not flying, but diving. It dives onto its prey, which are other birds. And it can dive at over 250 miles an hour. They've actually clocked this with radar guns and stuff. And I've known of people that were bird watchers, and they would get up on the parkway, which is a long way away from Looking Glass, and with their telescopic devices, and try to see the peregrines.
a little far away.
You can't. You can see Looking Glass, but you.
Yeah, I think about 10 years ago, you took a group. I was with you. We walked along the base of the north side looking for pigeon feet.
Well, we probably found pigeon feet.
Yeah. Pigeon feet.
Pigeon feet.
Pigeon.
Well, they don't eat the feet.
Okay.
So
that was a good sign.
because the peregrines are nesting in the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was protected. Is it still protected for nesting sites?
Every year for half a year, from middle of January to the middle of August, I believe it is, they protect the area where the peregrines are known to lay their eggs and raise their babies. And that area is protected from anybody even hiking in there. No climbing, no what people call bouldering, which is climbing without any ropes. It's just climbing on the rocks. There's signs up that say, "Don't come in, you're going to be fined." It's federal protection. And that's in many places, not just Looking Glass. But the peregrines at Looking Glass, we think it's the same ones, or now chicks from the same ones that come back now that are growing up, and they raise their babies in the same place.
Wow.
There's just a huge ledge, always probably the size of that thing over there as far as area goes, and the birds can raise they lay their eggs on the rock. They don't make a nest. People call it nesting, but they don't make a nest. They just lay eggs on the rock. And fortunately, the eggs are normally egg-shaped, so they don't roll away. If you get a round egg and it starts rolling away, it's not going to stop. But an egg-shaped egg won't roll away very much. And when the peregrines move around and the eggs move around too, they generally stay in the same spot. And mother and sometimes dad will get on top and brood them. They'll keep the eggs warm. And about a month later, after the eggs have been laid, the babies poke out with their little beaks, and now it's time for mom and dad to feed them. And another month goes by until the babies are now big enough to fly. And when they can fly, or at least give it a try, it's called fledging, and they get on the edge, I suppose, and jump off. Now you get this picture of mom and dad saying, "Okay, guys, it's time to go," and bump. Now, I don't think it's quite like that. And there are situations, of course, when the baby tries to fly, and that's the only time it tries to fly. It crashes. In fact, if 3 or 4, which is a typical brood, are hatched in 1 year, chances are that only one might make it.
Wow.
Until they are able to breed again.
And so people should know that Steve here, in addition to climbing, bicycling, running, writing books, giving talks, etc., he is a licensed wildlife educator, where he is able to take in injured, or what would you say?
I don't know. The regulations are quite strict. My license is...
Remember, you are on the air, so make sure you don't say anything illegal.
My license is... Thank you.
Okay.
My license is strictly for education. I'm the one, when a rehabber, who's the person that gets an animal, and in this case we're talking about birds of prey, for some reason it's been injured, probably hit by a car. Happens lots of times, especially to big birds like red-tailed hawks and great horned owls. But the rehabbers, if the vet can't take care of it, and the vet knows of a rehabber, and there's a lot of rehabbers around, these are wonderful people, and they do this with their own money and their own time, and it takes a lot of both. The rehabber then tries to care for the bird, which means feed it, give it medication, see to it that it's not injured by other animals, because there's many animals that want to get in and get the food that people put in the cages. And falconers call the cages mews, M-E-W-S, get in the mews so they can, so the animals can eat. But we'll say a raccoon and this happens a lot, raccoon will get in, and you think that the hawk or the owl is going to be killed or you think they're going to kill the raccoon. Well, generally that's not what happens. But eventually, if the bird can fly again, because for some reason it couldn't escape, now it can fly, and the rehabber will take a live animal. Typically it'll be a mouse, or if it's large enough, a rat, and they'll put it in with these birds that we're trying to see whether they know how to hunt. Because when you're raising babies, you're not sure they know how to hunt, because mom and dad do the teaching, and in this case, they might not have any mom and dad to teach them. But if this injured bird or this young bird can find the prey, and then it can kill it and eat, then it's probably releasable. And they'll take it to a suitable spot, sometimes even where the bird was found injured, or where the nest was found, because sometimes nests will fall out of trees, and then birds are brought to the rehabber, and then that's the rehabber's job. But if for some reason the bird cannot fly, or it can't fly quietly, because an owl, if it makes noise when it flies, if its wings make noise, it's going to starve, because when the prey hears the flappity flap of the owl coming, it takes off. But if the bird cannot be released for some reason or another, then I'm the next step, perhaps. If there's a person who's an educator, and there's not a lot of people that do this, but if the educator needs a bird and is aware of it and has permission from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because all the permits are involved in order to take care of that, then they can acquire that bird. They don't own it, but they can keep care of it. And then if they can train it where it will sit on your hand and it doesn't spook when it's up there like that, then it can be used as an educational bird. And so I've had a number of birds over the years that I've been able to train, where they could be taken to classes or taken to groups, and the bird was okay being in front of strangers.
Yeah, you brought them to my classroom back when I was a teacher many a time. Always a thrill to the kids.
Well, it's a thrill for me to be able to let them see these birds, because this is something that they don't know, that all these birds are out there in the world. Oh, they might read about them or know about them in some way or another, but they don't never. I've gotten so close they could touch them. We don't let them touch them, because that can be frightening for the bird, and a person could be hurt, because could be scratched by the talons or even the beak of the bird. But this is something that I've done for many years, and because of COVID and raccoons getting into my mews where the birds were living, COVID hasn't hurt the birds, COVID's hurt the audience because they're not letting strangers come in. We're bringing in birds because people got all these ideas that the bird's going to bring in disease, or maybe the educator's going to have disease and bring it in. So I haven't done any bird programs.
I think people are
well over a year. So I'm about out of birds, to tell you the truth.
Well, you still got a good crew of animals at your house. You were mentioning them earlier. So.
Well, I have a few snakes, and I have a screech owl, and then I have a peregrine falcon.
And you should know, by the way, Steve is won't embarrass him, but the oldest of the three of us. He biked here today from Zirconia. How far is that, Steve? Trip?
12 miles? 12,
from
15
Zirconia, it's about 12 miles.
And going back, it's mostly uphill.
It's mostly downhill getting here.
Right. So going back, which is just a few minutes.
I used to ride that. Yeah, I couldn't do it now.
I rode it in my car following you not too long ago, Gary. That was fun. Well, we're going to have to wrap this up because we don't know when this camera will die. But Steve is a rock star in all kinds of areas, and we're happy to have him on.
We're lucky to have him.
We are. And you know what? This doesn't happen often.
Okay.
Do you know what's coming up, Gary?
I do.
So
Steve now has received a certificate of BS in podcasting from the Gary and Mark Podcasting University. There it is. There's his diploma.
Oh my!
And on the back of his diploma,
on the back, a very attractive decal. The Gary and Mark Podcasting University, as well as this 2-week all expense paid to Rabbit Island Resort.
Oh my God!
Yes,
just a hair better. Yes,
just a hair better.
Yes,
and I'm telling you, it doesn't happen often. It's been a while since we've been able to do this, but we are so happy. I mean, and you not only earned it, but you get the extra honors, BS degree.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Board of Trustees at Watershed, Gary and Mark Podcasting University, will get together and decide should it be on the faculty.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we've got probably more faculty than
we've
graduates.
We've got tons of faculty.
We do. But, Gary, anything else to say before we thank
this
our
is
sponsors?
Let's thank our sponsors. Big Whizz Pocket Buddy.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Let's see.
You kind of hinted about Rabbit
Island Resorts. Saluda. Let's see. Big Eddy's Green River Tap Room. Green Eddy.
Big Eddy's. Let's see. What is it now?
Big Eddy's.
Big Eddy's Green River.
At Saluda Outfitters.
There you go. Right down the road from
Right
here.
down the road.
All right. We got L.J. Meyers and his professional white dove releases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are we leaving out?
We're leaving out Iron Key Brewing Company.
Oh, Iron Key Brewing.
And now I have a decal on my podcasting bag over there from them. And we also, let's see, we said it, Rabbit Island Resort. But our friends, if they want to join Steve as a graduate, it is not too late to enroll.
That's right.
Free tuition.
Free tuition, and we were right there to talk about online learning.
Yes.
We were distance learning.
We
you couldn't get any further away than us.
No, we were ahead of that before anybody even thought of that.
Lots of BS.
We do have that.
Gary came up with that, I think. So, Steve, we want to thank you for being part of our show. Everybody needs to get to www.garyandmark.com and enroll in university. We'll find a picture of Steve to put up there. And
if you go Google Steve Longenecker, and there's an E. There's 2 E's, 3 E's.
Hope
in
I
Longenecker.
spelled that right. Okay.
You did.
Read a little bit about the early days of climbing. But
he is a pioneer.
He is.
He is.
We're glad to have him.
Yeah. So, Steve, thanks so much for being a part of this show today, the Gary and Mark Podcast. And hopefully you'll make us go viral. We could use some of that.